Welcome to Strip Cover Look, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for the 28th chapter in a 28th video as well, in a 34-ish part series as we journey chapter by chapter through Fairy Tale by Stephen King. We have a So What Happened section, we have a Lit Crit discussion, and we have a Writer's Notes section of this video, all from Stephen King's Fairy Tale. So let's get right into it. Look, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel. If you're here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button. If you want to help me out with what I'm doing here on the channel in my desire to spread literature, hitting the like button does the trick. Let's get into it. So, what happened? We find ourselves at the beginning of this chapter waiting to begin our journey into the magical city through the magical city walls. And it begins to rain, so everyone's getting wet except for Leah, who has a poncho, which is just a poncho, I guess. Maybe Bowditch brought it for her. Maybe he bought it for 99 cents at the dollar and dime store. I don't know. When they commence their trip, Leah leads them, and that's going to be sort of what this chapter is about. Leah leading people places. Leah leading people places when it's not Charlie temporarily leading people places, but it is Leah here who leads them to a small sort of hidden door in the city walls, I guess. Anyway, they get inside, and once they are inside, they begin to hear the howls of Hannah mourning her daughter, Red Molly. Then, Charlie wants to exorcise the demons. That's how he says it. I don't know why. That's how he says it. But everybody's kind of weirded out because they're hearing Red Molly. They're seeing the walls move. They're seeing other stuff that they don't really know if they're seeing or not. They're hearing things they don't know if they're hearing because they're not hearing it with their ears. They're hearing it in their head. All sorts of things. And Charlie says, hey, I want to kill Hannah. Okay, great. Apparently that's what you need to do. And they find Hannah. I mean, this is the day after. So, okay. They find her like the Pieta, holding her daughter, still holding her daughter. I guess we're left to assume that she has been holding the dead body of her daughter, kissing it and weeping for the 12 hours or whatever, since our heroes left the city. Charlie and Radar approach to kill the giant, and Hannah gets up and charges them. And Charlie puts two between her eyes, and it stops the giant. It stops Hannah. Cool. 2 bullets, boom, boom. Eris decides this would be a great time to pee on a giant. So she pees on the giant. That's what you do. That's what you do when someone kills a giant. You pee on them. Right? It's in all the stories. It's what we do when we kill a giant. And the other thing you do when you kill a giant is someone has to cut off their head. Of course, this here is Leah draws her sword from the scabbard and in 3 whacks cuts the head off of the giant, and Iota is then charged with carrying the giant's head. Cool. Then Charlie says, hey, I want to show you something. So he does. He takes Leah to, guess, her dead mermaid friend. That's what you got to do. You got to pee on giants, and you got to show people their dead friends. It only makes sense. We're in a fantasy novel. Who doesn't fantasize about popping a squat on a giant or showing some lady her dead mermaid friend? So, Leah decides this would be a great time to break down. So she breaks down, and then they enter the palace. Leah starts entering the palace, leads them through the palace. They marvel at the royal bank. They enter a kitchen. Well, why not? And there are several Greys in this kitchen, and Charlie says, hey, you, Greys. And they bow to him, and he says, no, stop that. Where's Percy? And they say, I don't know. Maybe he's dead. We think he's dead. They took him. We haven't seen him. Probably he's dead. That's what they do to people, to kill him. Leah leads them to a room with a large crankshaft. If this chapter wasn't sort of masturbation enough, we get all of our characters taking turns yanking a crankshaft. Charlie asks why, and Leah tells him, quote, "We must go up to go down. Gotta get up to get down. Gotta get up to get down." The literary discussion here will begin on 508. All the way back at the beginning of this illustrious chapter. And we have in these sort of ruins of this city, we have Charlie musing, "All I knew for sure was that the present regime cared little about keeping Lillimar neat and tidy. What it cared about were blood sports." Is this a musing on the American condition? We do love our football. We do love our UFC. We do love boxing. These are things which football is nowhere near a worldwide sport. UFC is a little bit more, but boxing has receded from the worldwide sort of gaze. However, we do not care about infrastructure here in this country. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Everything is disintegrating beneath our very feet. Stephen King often muses about when he was younger and things seemed so much better. If you will remember It, the book It. In It, Stephen King often talks about how, or often paints the picture of a much more plush world that existed during those years in the 50s. 50s? I think? 50s? I think. Sure, there was the strange substrate which was presented to us by Pennywise the Dancing Clown. He was always there, but he didn't kind of fit in the way when the novel comes back to us in the 80s, everything has gone to hell. Everything is sort of on Pennywise's level and much more simple for the picking. So I think that maybe what we have here, and if you read Danse Macabre, there is sort of an overarching elitism to many of Stephen King's opinions on things that, hey, stuff was better then. Stuff is not as good as it used to be. Stuff isn't as cool as it might be. Stuff isn't really all that it was. And it seemed maybe we have some of that leaking into this chapter of the book. We have some of that, the downfall of our civilization, the downfall of America, the downfall of American exceptionalism. Though, probably, Stephen King would not admit that there ever was American exceptionalism. So, we have to, and I'm just bringing that up because of some of the things that Stephen King has written about, some of the things Stephen King has said. So, when you are sort of dealing with that in your head, that things were never all that great, but they're definitely worse now, where are we? Where are we with things? So, okay, let's just pretend and set percentages to it, set numbers to it. If the idea is that 3 in every 100 people used to suck, are we saying now that 30 in every 100 people now suck? Are we saying that 99 in 100 people in this world, this Lillimar in which this Lillimar in which our characters find themselves suck? Is this the down trend that we in America find ourselves on which we in America find ourselves? I don't know. That is the only lit crit sort of discussion that I have for this episode, but I've got 2 things to talk about with the writer's notes. On page 508, we have 508, that's the, yeah. We are sitting here waiting to begin our journey. We are sitting here, we've got Radar, we've got Snab, we've got Iota and Jairus and Leah and Charlie and all these characters. And they're sitting in the rain. And we get this. Time passed. Cool. What does that mean? So there is a school of writing known as burnt tongue writing. And what this means is you want to give these sort of details about things in a way that burns the tongue, in a way that is not sort of tepid and cliche. The phrase time past. What does this mean? Now, it is a little bit so the burnt tongue school of thought also does not believe in numbers. So if you were to say, if you were to tell me a story about kindergarten, you said, when I was 5, what does that mean? When I was 5, where are you when you're 5? Who knows what that means? Back when I thought that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were real and that weird stuff that kind of comes out of the sewage drains, I thought that that was mutagen. It was really just moss and mold. But back when I thought it was mutagen, I used to think that we could really enter that and turn into a superhero. That is much more of a descriptive sort of thing than when I was 5. Time passed. As a reader, what does this communicate to you? We don't really feel anything from it. So long went by that I thought I might be hungry. So long went by that I thought Iota was going to eat me. Something like this. Something that gives us an emotional change to a character. Something that reflects an idea, a presence, as opposed to time passed. Time passed. It's different 30 minutes later. That tells us nothing as well. The burnt tongue school of writing says that what we have to do is get into a ness. So for me, what is Adrian Ness? Ness. What is time Ness? What is Lilimar Ness? Once we are able to really get a hold on a Ness, we can then explain the change within. We can explain the way that the thing we end up with is not the thing with which we started. Once we can do that as writers, we can instill in our readers an experience, rather than the words on the page, an experience. If you tell us, as we're going to get to in the next sort of thing I have to talk about, if you just tell us a series of things, maybe we as the reader are invested enough to come along with you. Maybe we, the readers, are even invested enough to feel something. But the really good writers, the really good writing, does not care if you are invested or not. What the really good reading, what the really good writers do, they are the investment. You have no say in the matter. You are kidnapped, as it were, by the language. If I, as a writer, can explain a Ness to you, an Adrian Ness, what it means to be me, is going to be something with which you can connect, and you cannot argue. You might not feel the same way, but you know the feeling. You might not be there, you will be there present with our characters because you don't get a choice in the matter. You're kidnapped. But these phrases like time passed, when I was 5 years old, they give the reader nothing. And one of the great joys of reading is that we can learn things, experience things, be places without ever leaving where we're at. It doubles and triples our life being, our life experience, the things that we have, the things that we do, the things that we know, the things that we don't have, at which we do not have to fail in order to grasp. That is what great writing can do. And when you use phrases like time passed, like when I was 5, you're ripping those things from your reader. The final note that I really have here for a writer's note, the final note that I have here for chapter 28, be back for chapter 29. Hopefully I won't be this ranty. Hopefully there will be something a little more to nibble on in chapter 29. Hemingway said to be sure not to confuse movement with action. Everybody likes action. Action gives us something to follow. Action gives us something to feel. Action gives us something to do. Action gives us an experience. Movement, well, that's movement. We're moving along the story. We're going along with things. This chapter really sort of feels like a series of, hey, look at this. Hey, look at that. Hey, over here is an XYZ, and that's fine. Those chapters can exist. It's difficult, I think, to stomach one of those chapters 500 pages into a book, because what it says is we didn't know any of these things before this. I think it's difficult to stomach one of those chapters 500 pages into a book, because it's things that we probably should have experienced up to that point, or at least things about which we should have heard. We don't care about this giant crankshaft. We don't care about the kitchen. We don't care about the Royal Bank. We don't care about this little crevice in the wall. We don't care about any of this stuff right now, because we're 500 pages in. We've got like 3 chapters left. This pointing does us no good. That is all I have for this, the 28th in a 34-ish part series as we journey chapter by chapter through Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I hope to have you back next week for chapter 29, and we're going to carry on through this thing. I will be back Monday with a poetry discussion. Why? Because we have poetry on Mondays, and on Mondays we have poetry.